Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2023 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster towed vehicle battery charge line kit. Before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to touch base and refresh yourselves on the main parts that we're going to need to flat tow our Equinox down the road in the first place. First component will be your base plate. What that's going to do is provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. Tow bar is that second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your Equinox to the back of your coach. The third main component will be safety cables. These are pretty straightforward. You know, these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component will be tow bar wiring. And what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your RV to the back of your Equinox, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Chevy whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, bringing you to a more complete and predictable stop. A battery charge line is a lot of times a component that's overlooked and a lot of people don't think about, but it is absolutely critical on a vehicle like the Equinox. And so what the battery charge line is going to do is it's going to use your motorhome's 12-volt auxiliary power at the back of the 7-way connector and use some of that power to essentially maintain or trickle charge, if you will, the Equinox battery. And that's important to keep this battery topped off, because not only will the supplemental braking system use power when it operates, but with the Equinox having electric assisted brakes, that also uses battery power. So the last thing you want to happen is your battery to run too low and go flat, and them components not have the proper voltage to work and be able to function. Not only that, I mean, honestly, a charge line is something I recommend for every single flat tow that I set up. And, you know, just to be able to maintain that battery life, you know, it's going to prolong the life of it in general. And, you know, once you get to your destination, you're not going to have to worry about a dead battery, because, you know, that would really be a bummer to get there, go to disconnect, vehicle not turn on, then you're dealing with you know, finding jumper cables or bothering someone to help you or getting a jump box out, whatever the case may be. You know, having this charge line is going to prevent all that from happening. I do want to mention, a setup like this isn't going to affect your motorhome's batteries, all right? And that's because it gets that 12-volt power from the 7-way, which is what it's designed, what it's there for. And the motorhome has its own charging system on board, you know, the alternator and everything. So there's definitely some amperage to spare to be able to send back to our battery. So that power comes in from the motorhome, comes into a breaker, a circuit breaker, out into the positive battery post. So the breaker's there. If there's a short or something like that going on, the breaker will trip and prevent, you know, things from burning up and whatnot. To compare this kit to one of the other ones, they're all going to get the job done. Don't get me wrong. There is a Demco charge line kit available that I like a little bit better, to be honest with you. They use a fuse, you know, kind of your standard fuse there instead of the breaker. And there's also a small diode built into it, which prevents the electricity, you know, prevents battery power from going backwards and having a hot pin at your connector plug up front on your Chevy. And I found because of that, you tend to get a little less corrosion and stuff going on your 6-way connector in the front of the Equinox. But either one's going to work just fine. We haven't ran into any issues with these, nor the Demco one. So, you know, when it comes down to it, both of them are going to work. Keep that battery charged up and everything working properly. So at the end of the day, kind of a no-brainer to use a setup like this one here, just giving you that peace of mind knowing that your battery's going to stay charged up. As far as the installation goes, really nothing to it. You mount up your breaker and run a couple of wires. So I do recommend doing this at the same time you're doing all your other components, while you're already routing stuff, and have everything kind of halfway apart. Gives you a little more room. But if you're adding this on later or after you have your other flat tow components, it definitely can still be done. Just won't have as much room to work with. But if you'd like to see how we did it, feel free to follow along. We'll go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. To begin our charge line installation, we're going to be working here at the front of our Equinox, and we're going to be working on the back of our 6-way round connector plug from our diode wiring. And I want to mention, I got the front fascia removed. That's because we're doing this the same time we're doing our base plate. Makes it a lot easier, a lot more room to work. And the charge line is also, it's an opportune time whenever you're installing your diode wiring to do this at the same time. That way you only have to route your wires once, which is exactly what we're doing. But with that said, I'm going to take one end of the red wire, put it through the rubber boot from our connector plug, and pass it through. Now we're able to strip the end of the insulation back to expose the bare wire underneath. Grab it and twist it, make sure it's nice and tight. And then on our connector plug here, we're going to be working with the center terminal. So you just take a small Phillips screwdriver and unthread that set screw a little ways. Then the wire is simply just going to push into place. You can hold it down and tighten up the set screw. Now that we got everything hooked up, you can take that dust cover and put it on the back of the connector plug. I usually come back and put sealer all around the terminals just to help prevent corrosion, but I like to do that at the very end. That way I know everything's working the way it should, and if we have to get back in here, it's not a huge mess. So we'll just do that for now, and then just to hold everything in place, I will secure the connector plug. Now we're able to route our wiring up into the engine compartment, and so I just ran it along through here, now on top of our base plate, where it comes up, kind of goes through there, where it's going to come out in the engine compartment, kind of behind our headlight. Here's where our wiring is going to come up, and we need to find a spot to mount up our circuit breaker, which I think we're going to go right here in this area. So in order to get that done, they give you a couple of self-tapping screws, and make sure there's nothing behind there, which we're in good shape. But we'll simply just take our screw and run it down. We can grab our wire and kind of just eyeball the distance. So the end that's going to our connector plug up front is going to go to the gold post labeled battery. And I know that seems opposite of what it should be, but our motorhome is acting as the battery, how this is going to be set up. So we'll take that, cut it to length, strip back our insulation there, and then you're going to take one of those small terminals, ring terminals, slide it on, and crimp it down. We'll then remove that nut. Slide it over the post and get it started. We'll come back with a 3/8 size socket and snug it down. You can take the remaining portion of your wiring, and on one end you're going to crimp on a large ring terminal, the other end a small. And as you might have guessed, the small one is going to go on our silver post there. Tighten this down. The other end is going to get connected to our positive battery terminal. Since this nut here on our positive battery terminal isn't designed to come completely off, I'm going to modify the ring terminal a little bit. So you can just cut a small opening in it there. And I'm going to kind of close up the gap a little bit too, make it smaller. Something about like that'll work. And what you're going to do, take a 10mm socket and you can loosen up the nut. And then our ring terminal, I'm just going to slide that in underneath of it. And then tighten the nut back down. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster towed vehicle battery charge line kit on our 2023 Chevrolet Equinox.